Welcome to the Social Your Sales podcast. Social has changed the B2B and professional services sales landscape forever. We are here to help you navigate what you need to know and how to execute these new strategies. Whether you are a sales leader, individual producer, or a member of the C-suite looking for answers, this is the podcast for you. Now here are your hosts, Brandon and Erik.
Hey everybody, welcome to Social Your Sales podcast. And before we get started with Amy Franko, you get to listen to Erik and I talk a little bit about what we just experienced with her.
Just a quick minute because I want you to get to the podcast as quick as possible. But Amy Franko, really interesting lady. If you've not seen her at amyfranko.com or on her LinkedIn, you should. Very insightful thoughts about selling in general and what that modern seller looks like. But interestingly, and you brought this up, you had been working with her and made contact with her years ago, before COVID hit, before everyone decided that social selling meant social media selling.
Right.
And in her case, we're not necessarily talking about that, are we?
Right. And, and I think we fight that a lot too. I mean, How many times have we said, I hate the term social selling because what so many people think of is blasting messages through LinkedIn.
Right.
And that's not social
Not
selling.
social selling.
And it's not what Amy's perspective of social, being social in your selling, that doesn't fit either, because you could be social in live, you could be social in social media, you could be social even in some emails and phone calls. It really is more of an approach, and I liked how she differentiated that.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting. I mean, she's got her 5 sort of classifications of that modern seller.
Yeah.
But I also found it interesting how she's got clients that are doing extremely well right now.
Mm-hmm.
She's got clients that are doing not well, but are now starting to make those investments again, which is good to hear.
Yeah.
Because they realize they can't just sit back for another year and just let something will happen. Hopefully, something's going to be. You're going to close your doors. Yeah. So really, some great insights from her, and I got some personal things answered about how she sees people when how do you coach somebody when they can't go visit.
Right.
A client when they're used to that traditional social selling. What does social become when you do that?
What I appreciate about the conversation too is Amy shared with us how she sells, which is really solopreneur, keynote speaker. Yep. She has a development company, a training and development company as well. And then she talks about how she trains and coaches her team, her customers, which are large teams. So she's got that perspective of both, which I think is very valuable for people. So everybody, here we go with Amy Franko and the Modern Seller. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Social Your Sales podcast. I say this a lot, I'm so excited with our guest today, but Amy and I do go back probably 4 or 5 years now, and we've developed a friendship as well as a working relationship. I think her Modern Seller book is exceptional and timely. And welcome, Amy Franko, to the show.
I am so happy to be here, and I feel like it's a little bit of a reunion because we haven't seen each other in a little while. So I was really looking forward to it.
I'm so glad you're here. Well, everybody, Amy is a keynote speaker. You can find her at amyfranko.com, which I know we'll put in the notes, and Amy will share that at the end here. But she's an author and a keynote speaker primarily. I know you also have your training side of the business and your membership program. I'd love to give you the chance. But without talking all the other about your history and all that, you have a long history in corporate sales. You've been working with sales teams for a really long time. And your book, Modern Seller, has come out now 2 years ago?
It's 3 years this month.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that crazy? Ago. Like, where did 3 years go?
Yeah. And my opinion, you and I were talking about social then, and a modern seller. I think you were early. You were pretty innovative with what you were doing. I'd love to hear over those last 3 years, what doors that book has opened for you. And
Yeah, it's been well for everybody. I think it's been a bit of a wild ride over the last 2 or 3 years. It might be the understatement of the show. But yeah, what's interesting, like having conversations with people who read and buy the book it's like, wow, this book was written 3 years ago, but it really could have been written last week. And it's a really nice compliment that it's timeless, and that the concepts in the book have application no matter what happens to be going on in the world. When that book was published, none of us saw the last couple of years coming around the corner. So I think it just speaks to how much more agile and adaptable we all have to be, and how we have to, it's like you can't be ready for everything, but you have to be ready for everything at the same time.
Yeah, for our listeners, number one, go buy the book. And number two, I'd say, Amy, do you want to give an overview of the 5 characteristics of the social seller? Because I really do. I use your material a lot and reference it because I think it's spot on.
I often call you my hype man, so thank you.
I thought you were going to say fanboy, but I could go for either one: hype man, fanboy, corner guy, whatever.
You're too old to be a fanboy, or any boy.
You're referring to my gray hair.
I am.
Darn it.
This is where you have to get him back on track.
That's right.
Exactly.
Right.
So back on track. The 5 characteristics of a modern seller.
Yes, I was the one that got us off track. So yes, the five characteristics of the modern seller. The modern seller is agile. I'll just go through all 5, and then I'll give a little bit of a summary of each of them. The modern seller is agile, entrepreneurial, holistic, social, and an ambassador. And so those are, as I was writing and researching the book, in my world, I do a lot of learning and development type of work, strategy work, but a lot of learning and development. And as I was working with clients and prospective clients, we get really focused in on the tactical everyday activities that we have to do. Prospecting, presenting, negotiating, closing, all very important, and we have to be skilled at them. But I was starting to think about these skills behind the skills. What are the things that we can be focused on to help us be better, more effective, more efficient at all of the activities that sales professionals and sales leaders have to do? And there's a lot of them. So those were the 5. And I could just give like a quick high level definition of each, and then we could dive into the ones that you guys make the most sense. But agile is probably would that be like the word of the last couple of years? Agile, and perhaps the word pivot. If we're looking for buzzwords,
there's a few cuss words that come to mind for the last 2 years
course,
too, but we'll save those.
That too. We'll save those for the outtakes. But the ability to be agile is that ability to anticipate what's coming next, or to be comfortable with not knowing what's coming next, and having that inner knowing that you will figure it out, and having to help your clients figure it out and navigate it too. So there's some self-navigation, and also having to help your clients and prospects. Entrepreneurial is that mindset and approach that says, I'm not just an employee of my organization. I'm the CEO of my sales territory, my book of business. And when we think about ourselves in that way, we make different decisions. We're looking at things differently. We're looking at the top line or the bottom line. We're looking at our opportunities and our risks. It's just a way different thought process than just being someone who shows up, does the bare minimum, and then leaves for the day. Holistic is a couple different things, and it's a lot of supply chain thinking. Things are really interconnected, and we've all experienced the supply chain over the last 12 to 18 months. So I think we could really relate to this right now. But decisions that we make over here can have a lot of unintended consequences over here, positive or negative. But we have to think about things as interconnected systems. And that impacts us as sellers, it impacts our organizations, it impacts our customers and our prospects. Social is the ability to identify and build strategic relationships. Brandon knows this about me. LinkedIn is my social platform of choice, but I really think about social as being intentional about the types of relationships that we're building. And he and I share that philosophy. Mm-hmm. Those platforms are tools to help us do that, but we have to always be thinking about, what are our goals? What are our clients' goals? What relationships do I want to be building, adding value to help me create the best opportunities, whether personal or professional? And then the last one is as ambassador, which is about building loyalty. Loyalty is kind of hard to come by. I think more and more people have so much choice. The choice is almost limitless. And so we have to be able to stand out, and we have to really understand what our customers and our prospects most value so that we can deliver on those things. And when we do those things, we can help to build loyalty, which increases overall value for us, our organizations, for our customers. So that's just a really high level snapshot of the 5. And then the book gets into what it looks like and how you could build it as a seller or a leader.
You know, I wonder, when I look at, and I've spent the last 34 years in the B2B space, that enterprise sales space. And one of the things that I find that it's difficult for reps to do today in a social selling environment is to really understand what that company does before they make that contact. You know, I can't tell you, I mean, I get contacted 30 times a week by people or more, probably 30 times a day, who want to link in, and you know that the next message is going to be, here's what I offer. Do you have 30 minutes of your time? It's like, no, I actually don't. And
no.
And they've made no effort. You know, they say, it looks like our services can help you. And their services are in direct conflict with our services. So clearly they haven't done that much work. It's amazing to me, and it used to amaze me when reps would go on calls and not understand what a company did before they made that call, and understand what's happening in that company's industry. What challenges are they facing? What are the regulatory issues, the liability issues, the compliance issues that a company is facing that you may be able to help either in your approach, in the overall solution you provide, or in the product itself that you're providing. But it seems to me that that many sales reps have gotten lazy at doing that, because social just seems like such an easy outreach. What do you recommend somebody do when they are wanting to make a connection to potentially down the road, if they can build that relationship, maybe talk about what they do, but what sort of due diligence should be doing first before they even bother making that connection?
Yeah. So first of all, you and I have some similarity in our background. I grew up in technology. I worked for IBM and Lenovo for a number of years, and I was a quota-carrying salesperson. I sold PC technology hardware. Yeah. So I understand and have a lot of experience in that whole B2B enterprise space. So I just wanted to make mention of that. But to answer your question, I don't know what's worse, asking for the 30-minute meeting or the 5-minute meeting. Have any of you ever gotten the request for the 5-minute meting? Yeah. It's like, really? Are you kidding me? No, you cannot have 5 minutes of my time. So, you know, the due diligence piece is interesting. And I think one of the fundamental maybe flaws in the approach is thinking that it can be very, very quickly scaled the way that people take the approach, which is where, you know, your work at FunnelAmplified makes that type of scale easier, because you can create that personalization with people, but you're not putting yourself into the box of, I'm going to write the same form message and just send it over and over and over again.
Yeah, we're not that marketing automation tool that just keeps
Right. Like for me, LinkedIn is not a marketing automation tool. It's for me to do my homework and to understand the people that I want to connect to. And, you know, when I'm connecting with people in more of I would call it a prospecting type of manner, I'm looking to make initial connection, I'll do 2 things. Really 3. Who is it that I want to connect to? What can I learn about their business in a short amount of time that will help me understand them a little bit better and help me to be knowledgeable for them? And then 3rd, who do I know that might be able to connect me to them? I'm always looking for a warm connection and a warm introduction. If I can do that, then I can accelerate building trust and having credibility. And so that's always where I go first. And then I like to know enough to help and to be knowledgeable, but without getting paralyzed by it.
Yeah, it would be interesting as part of that reaching out and talking to somebody that you may be connected in mutually, that if you happen to know that that person has sold into that environment, tell me about this person. How do they respond to things? What are their issues? What are their concerns? Even what are their interests?
I've had a couple of things lately, actually just today, where I was going through some of the connections that in my prospecting list, and at least 3 of them have moved to new roles in new companies in the last several months, and I'm thinking that's a trend that we're gonna see more of. So my approach, and I knew all of these folks well enough. We had established enough of a relationship where congratulated them on the move to their new role. I did not ask for a 30-minute meeting. I said, if I could be a resource for you in the future, never hesitate to reach out. And who should I connect back with at your organization? Who can I connect myself to or introduce myself to so that I can continue the relationship there? Right. So I think we're going to be seeing more of this movement and needing to have a strategy to stay connected to the people that are moving, but also if their or a previous organization is a target prospect or client for you, how do you stay connected in there?
Social Your Sales. We'll be right back.
Is your sales team struggling to hit quota? Are your buyers ignoring your sales requests for conversations? The third tier of digital transformation is social. Is your team equipped to meet this challenge? This show is brought to you by FunnelAmplified. We help sales teams align their sales process with how modern buyers prefer to make their purchase decisions. FunnelAmplified is a social selling platform that drives new opportunities with your sales team, using proven social selling tactics to drive pipelines and hit quotas. With FunnelAmplified, it's quota achieved. To learn more about FunnelAmplified or start a free trial, please visit us at FunnelAmplified.com.
I know your modern sellers are social isn't social media, but social media, and just clarifying everybody, it's not social broadcasting, it's not direct mail and get in front of everybody you can, but it's social is a means of communication. Email is a means of communication, and the phone is a means of communication. But all 3 of them need to work differently as they're trying to either cold call, cold email, ask for attention, if you will. How do you differentiate that when you're working with your customers and you're looking at those 3? And maybe there's also direct mail and other channels that we could bring into it. But I think specifically with a sales professional, it's phone, email, and social. How do you train and coach or consult companies in looking at those 3 mediums differently?
Yeah, and I think maybe where I'll start that answer is that we all have our comfort zones, myself included. I'm the person that will gravitate toward email first, and I'm aware of that. So I have to push myself out of my comfort zone to use other platforms. Mm-hmm. So even for example, using LinkedIn or LinkedIn messaging, doing video messages in LinkedIn. Now I will do that in email. So I've developed that comfort level, but those tend to be where I go first, and the phone is where I tend to go last. But interestingly enough, when I can connect with someone on the phone, we will oftentimes, especially if it's someone there's like a level of warmth there, it will be a good conversation, and I'll make some forward progress on that. So the lesson that, I have to pay attention for myself is to not fall into the trap of only the one place where I feel the most comfortable, but to push to the other ways of communicating so that there's a variety of approaches. Mm-hmm. That's often how I'll coach and counsel my clients on how to think about that. I also coach them on how to think strategically. If you've ever, we often coach, you'll hear the coaching around, hey, you need to have prospecting blocks. I use prospecting blocks, but if I come into a prospecting block and I haven't done any planning, my prospecting block either miraculously disappears because I find something else to do, or I spend that whole time planning and no time on execution. So the other piece to the equation is you have to think strategically about the ways in which you're communicating, but you also have to have a plan so that you can implement the plan and be successful with it.
Right. Yeah. You know, just it made me think of one of the things that I've done recently, and I can't remember exactly, but I put planning and prospecting back to back on my calendar. It helps.
I like that.
It helps me do it more often because I've got to build in the planning time, because I know me. I'm not going to do it ahead of time. I'm too busy. I'm doing other things, and then I would go to prospecting and go, well, okay, let me think through, and then I use half my prospecting time planning. So I'm like, well, this is an easy solution. You know, hour block of planning, hour block of prospecting, or whatever it may be. 30-minute of planning, an hour of prospecting. But that's the way I do my mornings. My mornings are generally, 6:30 to 8 of those two things.
And getting it out of the way early and getting it off the plate. It's like the longer it stretches into the day, the easier it is to say, oh, I'll get to that tomorrow.
Well, and what you'll notice with that too is I'm not doing a bunch of phone calls at those times, because I really don't want to piss off my prospects by calling them at 6:30 in the morning. So I do focus on my emails and my social engagement activity. And again, it's not sending LinkedIn messages asking people, but it's engaging with stuff that they've posted.
I mean,
like
it may be at some point, right? Mm-hmm. The LinkedIn messaging it's not a never do it.
No.
It's just it shouldn't be the tip of the spear. It shouldn't be the first effort in is I'm going to be, right, shooting them a message. You need to engage with them, as you mentioned. And I'm talking now about from a social, I don't care if it's social media or social in general, just live. You have to engage with somebody. I call it the digital cocktail party. When you're walking in, you're meeting somebody for the first time. You don't say, this is my name, this is what I sell. You talk to them and you build common ground and you understand more about them. Do they have kids? And the more you can engage in that social media platform or directly in a social setting, an in-person setting, however you may be evolving, so much so the better.
I think that what you just described there, it takes a level of you have to be a curious person. If it's not something that comes to you naturally, you have to develop that and be able to ask questions without being an interrogator.
Right.
Which and to really be able to you're genuinely interested in that other person, and kind of letting go of the outcomes. You know how you sometimes get in your head okay, when can I get to the point where I tell them about what I do and possibly identify an opportunity? That never comes off well. It always gets picked up. Those signals get picked up. But if you have that confidence and that curiosity, whether or not it leads to anything is not a reflection on you or your success. It's just simply part of the conversation.
Yeah. My most successful deals that I've ever had, including a $26 million deal and $23 million deal, and so these are some major opportunities, always came about not from a sales role at all. As a matter of fact, I wasn't the sales guy. I was the technical resource for the sales guys. And I would meet with the customer and have genuine discussions with them about their business, about what they did, but about them as well. We built those relationships. The sales rep always thought he had the relationship because he'd go play golf with them, right? and in all those things, which, yeah, of course, you want to take me to play golf? Sure, I'll play golf, whatever. But the real relationship was built on a mutual respect of understanding what that person does, and them eventually, actually, in those two cases, coming to me saying, here's what I'm thinking. What do you think about this? It was from building that trusted advisor status with them before I ever opened the door to selling anything. And I think that's what you're talking about is, it's got to be a genuine interest in that person, in what they're doing. And if you don't have time to establish that genuine interest, then you're doomed. I mean, there's no way of
hard to be in sales if you don't have a general interest in what your buyers are saying.
And you see it all the time, though. That's one of my biggest. And every one of these messages, where if anybody's listening that automates those as soon as you connect, it fires off that message to me asking for time. Stop doing it. Just stop. It's not working.
Amy, you talk to a lot of sales professionals. You talk to a lot of sales leaders. You were just a keynote at an event 2 days ago, I think. And I forget which event it was, but I saw that. Congratulations.
Thank you.
2020 was just a very odd year. The data that I'm reading from the outlets, like 2020, a lot of companies weren't hurting with revenue because their 2019 pipeline kind of fed them through. And then they got into 2021. Yeah, 2021, get my dates straight. And Erik shared with me a Gartner study that talked about the 6-month mark. Gartner was saying leads are down, revenues are down, marketing departments are getting their budgets squashed, things like that. We're 3 months as we're recording this. We're mid-October, coming into 2022. What are you hearing and what are you advising your customers going into 2022?
To the comments on pipeline and revenue and overall health, my experience has been that is industry specific. In other industries where they were hit very hard for a lot of different reasons, the aviation industry obviously, was completely wiped out for much of 2020, or supply chain issues in the manufacturing spaces, or not being able to get in and see clients, which is maybe something we can touch on in a moment. So the way that I've been working with my clients who run the gamut in terms of industry and size, it's looking at their environments specifically and what's working in your environment right now and what adjustments do you have to make to be successful. And every industry or organization is a little bit different. By and large, it's thinking very strategically about growing your best clients that have stayed with you and protecting those clients and growing them. Being very smart and intentional about the prospects and the targets that you are looking to build relationships with. And also investing in your teams, which might sound a little bit self-serving given the work that I do, but I'm finding organizations that are investing in their teams are more successful because they are better at retaining that talent. So those are probably 3 areas that I would say I'm advising clients on.
I like it. And go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask you, you meant, did you have a follow-on to that?
No, go right ahead.
Okay. I was going to ask you about not being able to see clients now. What are you recommending? Because that is, that's the lifeblood of most salespeople. It's really not cold call. If you're doing national accounts, or you've got a named account list or something like that, you've got the same people you touch on all the time, and you usually go see them. In many cases, you still can't do that. In some, you can. What have you been advising? What's your thoughts on what people should do about that?
First and foremost, it's the decision that you're going to figure it out and not let the ability to not see someone in person stop you. I hear that more than anything else. Well, I'm just going to wait until we can get back in front of people. I can't get in front of people. That's what's making this so hard. And not to say that that isn't a contributing factor, especially in some industries. It certainly is. I'd say the first and foremost, it's the decision of the individual sales professional and their leader to say, yeah, this is what we're dealing with, and we can't control that. We're going to decide that we're going to figure out how to do this successfully in a way that's either hybrid or completely virtually. Almost all the business that I closed this year was still done in a completely virtual way. Zoom, Teams, phone calls, what have you. So I'd say first is the decision. And then secondly, it's doing some thinking about, hey, which customers can I see? Which ones can't I see? And for the ones that I can, here's our approach. For the ones that I can't, here's my approach. The thing is, if they can't see me, they also can't see my competitors. So it's not as if you are on some uneven playing field. You got to figure out how to uneven the playing field in a virtual way.
Yeah. Now, when we're looking at, let's say, the enterprise space, I've seen many companies that have used COVID as an opportunity to reset their sales teams and restructure in some cases, sort of get rid of a whole lot of the the excess that wasn't necessarily performing, gave them a good excuse to do some restructuring. Are you seeing them make the investments in training in the human aspect of that development at this point, when maybe they're not spending a lot of time with windshield time driving from place to place, so it may open up opportunities to do a 45-minute or an hour Zoom training with somebody, once a week or something like that?
It was interesting kind of going from 2020 to 2021, where like 2020 was cancel. No, we're not doing anything. We're gonna wait this out, yeah. Right? And then by the time we get to the end of 2020 and we realize we're going to be in this for a while, it's going to be at least another year. And now here we are at the end of 2021, and I'm thinking it's going to be at least another year, just based on where we are. But there was almost like this switch flipped at the first part of 2021, where a lot of my clients said, and I appreciate this about them, they're like, we have to get back to it. Yeah. We spent all of 2020 with our heads down, and we have to get back to, even some of my clients that have been hit in the toughest industries, we're getting back to growth. Our boards are telling us we have to get back to growth. We are making investments, and even ones that maybe had some just hit hard, yeah. They have cash flow from PPP. They have cash flow from tax, employee tax credits, things like that, where they could make those investments in people. So that was my personal experience. And to your second point about some of the different ways to engage with them, I tend to take more of a programmatic approach where I can. So I might do something point in time for an existing client, but for a new client, I typically don't do something point in time unless it's like a keynote or something like that for an event, mm-hmm. because I personally have found that a lot of those, they don't stick. They're nice for like a point in time, but they don't stick for the long term.
Yeah, I don't think, especially in the season that we're in with so much change and so much challenge, right? And is that anything point in time in most industries right now? It's just half-day seminar for this, full-day seminar for that, an hour here. It's scratching the surface. Yeah,
no, what I'm really referring to more, though, is not necessarily a live session. It's just, this is an ongoing, continuous process of training and continuous reinforcement. Because, prior to to COVID starting, that 30-day drumbeat that every sales rep and every sales manager feels, it doesn't give you the time to reset, mm-hmm. and to learn some new skills and to understand more about how to research a company, how to, what do these things mean? It's not, you can't just research a company by going on their Google page. It's one of my hot buttons, if you couldn't tell. But if you take the time and start training them on some of these new skills that are an ongoing process, I don't think that's point in time. I think that's just restructuring the way your expectation of their time works.
Well, and I would say, and Amy, I'd love to let you have the last bit on this, but now more than ever, there's a need in most companies for ongoing training, because things are changing so quickly and so much is new. And whether it's supply chain is falling apart, we need to figure out new ways of doing this. They have to be trained on how to do that, because they knew, like, this is who I call, this is what I asked for, this is what I do. And now all of a sudden you're going, I got to find new. And there's some training and coaching and things that need to be involved in that. What are your thoughts, Amy?
So one of the changes I made during all of last year was taking a new look at how I can approach things differently with my clients. And one of the things that I implemented was the use of assessment and data on the front end of any relationship, current or new, to help the CEO or to help the sales leaders figure out, all right, what are the skills and competencies of my existing team? Where do we have strengths? Where do we have weaknesses? And using that data to help figure out what kind of skill development would be the most valuable to the team. That change has really helped me to position the skill development as more strategic and more in line with where they want to be into the future versus just making decisions based on here's what we think. Well, now we can do it from here's what we know from the data that is being shared with us. So I would say that that's one significant change that I've made that has helped with that skill development equation.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, we are out of time. Amy, thank you so much for joining us. And would you like to tell everybody the best way to connect with you?
The two best ways to connect with me, first, amyfranko.com. You can head out there to connect with me. And then secondly, please feel free to connect on LinkedIn.
Yeah, excellent. And go to Amazon and buy her book, The Modern Seller.
Absolutely.
And just and all this will be in the show notes, of course, but it's FARNKO, amyfranko.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Amy, for joining us. I always enjoy your posts and hearing your talks and whatnot on LinkedIn. So I'm one of those silent fans that's out there, and I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you for listening to the Social Your Sales podcast. If you enjoyed this show, please share it with your friends. Social is meant to be social, and sharing is a great way for us to meet you and get to know you. Click on share and tag us at FunnelAmplified, or just use #SocialYourSales.